The gleaming spires of the Galactic Council reached toward the twin suns of Nexus Prime, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the light of 1,000 worlds. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zolonian Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes as he walked through the marble corridors, his four arms gesturing in practiced diplomatic movements. Today would mark the beginning of what many considered an inevitable war. The human delegation had arrived 3 cycles ago, and their presence had become the subject of much amusement among the council members. Earth, a small blue world on the outer rim of the galaxy, had somehow managed to secure a seat at the negotiating table despite having only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Their technology was primitive, their military laughably small, and their diplomatic corps consisted of barely a dozen individuals. What made the situation even more amusing was the human delegation's choice of protection. While every major species brought elite warriors, advanced security systems, or psychic defenders, the humans had brought a single bodyguard. Marcus Chin stood 6 feet tall with unremarkable brown hair and calm dark eyes. He wore a simple black suit that looked almost ceremonial compared to the powered armor and energy weapons carried by other security details. Kethvar entered the vast assembly chamber where representatives from 47 species had gathered. The Thoraxian Imperium's delegation took up an entire section with their massive insectoid forms, each warrior standing 12 feet tall, with razor-sharp mandibles. The ethereal collective floated in their containment fields, their gaseous forms shifting between colors that hurt to look at directly. The Zephyrian war clans had brought a full pack of their wolf-like hunters, each one capable of tearing through steel with their claws. And there, in a modest section near the back, sat the 3 human diplomats with their lone protector. General Thax of the Corvin Dominion was holding court near the center of the chamber, his scaled hide gleaming under the artificial lighting. "The humans think they can negotiate with us as equals," he hissed to his assembled listeners. "Their entire fleet consists of maybe 200 ships. We have over 50,000 in our forward battle groups alone." Ambassador Yilandra of the Gossamer Syndicate laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. "I heard their bodyguard doesn't even carry visible weapons. What does he plan to do? Throw harsh words at attackers?" The laughter that followed echoed through the chamber. Even the usually stoic mechanoid representatives seemed amused, their optical sensors focusing on the human section with what could only be described as mechanical curiosity. Marcus Chin stood perfectly still during this display, his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes moved constantly, tracking every movement in the chamber, cataloging exits, identifying potential threats, and calculating response times. To the other species, he appeared to be doing nothing. They had no idea they were watching a weapon system perform its initial scans. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the lead human negotiator, felt the weight of every stare in the room. She was a small woman with graying hair and kind eyes, someone who had spent her career mediating disputes between nations on Earth. Now she sat at a table with beings who could extinguish her entire species without breaking what passed for a sweat. "Remember," whispered her aide, James Harrison, "we're here because the Zolonian Empire specifically requested human mediation. They must see something in us that others don't." The third member of their delegation, military advisor Colonel Patricia Vance, kept her expression neutral despite the obvious hostility in the room. She had served in 3 wars on Earth, and knew the look of predators sizing up prey. "They're testing us," she murmured, "seeing how we react to intimidation." As if summoned by their conversation, Ambassador Kethvar approached their table. His 4 arms moved in what humans had learned was a gesture of formal greeting, though the slight curl to his lip suggested something less than respect. "Dr. Mitchell," he said in accented but fluent English, "I trust you are prepared for today's proceedings? The matter we're discussing involves the potential annexation of 17 star systems. The Corvin Dominion has made their intentions quite clear." Sarah nodded calmly. "We've reviewed all the documentation, Ambassador. The human perspective is that there might be alternatives to military conquest that could benefit all parties involved." A ripple of laughter went through the nearby delegates who were listening. The concept that humans could offer alternatives to beings who had been conducting interstellar warfare for millennia struck them as adorably naive. "Of course," Kethvar replied smoothly. "Though I should mention that tensions have been running quite high. There have been several incidents, between various security details. Just yesterday, a Thraxian honor guard challenged a group of Zephyrian hunters to combat. It took 6 mediators to prevent bloodshed. He glanced meaningfully at Marcus, who continued to stand motionless. I do hope your guardian is prepared for the unique challenges of diplomatic protection in a multi-species environment. Before Sarah could respond, a commotion erupted across the chamber. A massive Thraxian warrior had apparently taken offense at something said by a Gossamer diplomat. The insectoid being reared up to its full height, mandibles clicking ominously as it advanced on the floating energy form. Security details from a dozen species immediately went on high alert. Energy weapons powered up, claws extended, and psychic shields activated. The chamber filled with the sound of charging weapons and aggressive posturing. Throughout all of this, Marcus Chun took exactly 3 steps forward, placing himself at the optimal position to protect his charges from any collateral damage. His movement was so subtle that most beings didn't even notice it. Those who did might have thought he was simply repositioning for a better view. The Thraxian warrior suddenly stopped its advance. Its compound eyes, which had been focused on the Gossamer diplomat, shifted slightly. For just a moment, they fixed on the human bodyguard who stood quietly in the back of the chamber. The massive insectoid being slowly lowered itself back down, its mandibles retracting. The aggressive posture melted away as if it had never existed. The watching delegates assumed the creature had simply thought better of starting an international incident. They had no way of knowing that in that brief moment of eye contact, the Thraxian's advanced compound vision had detected something that its brain couldn't quite process. The human stillness wasn't the stillness of a statue. It was the stillness of a predator that had already calculated 17 different ways to end the threat before it could take another step. Ambassador Kethvar felt a small chill run down his spine, though he couldn't say why. The human bodyguard hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, hadn't even changed expression. But, somehow, the very air around him seemed to have shifted. Interesting, the Zolonian diplomat murmured, more to himself than to the humans. Most interesting indeed. The chamber gradually returned to normal as various security details stood down. Conversations resumed, though with a slightly more cautious tone than before. The humans remained in their seats, apparently unaffected by the near violence that had erupted around them. Dr. Mitchell checked her notes one final time before the formal session would begin. The items on today's agenda seemed insurmountable. The Corvin Dominion wanted to expand their territory. The affected systems were inhabited by species that lacked the military strength to resist. The major powers were divided on whether to intervene, and those divisions were threatening to spark the largest galactic war in over 1,000 years. Somehow, in the middle of this powder keg, the various factions had agreed to let humanity attempt mediation. Sarah suspected it was because none of the major powers saw humans as a threat to their own interests. They were willing to let the newcomers try simply because failure would cost them nothing. What none of them realized was that Marcus Chun represented something entirely new in their galaxy. Every species had evolved their own approaches to warfare and protection. The Thraxians relied on size and natural weapons. The Zephyrians used pack tactics and overwhelming speed. The Ethereals employed psychic abilities that could shatter minds. Humans had taken a different path. They had learned to wage war with their minds first, turning conflict into a science of prediction, preparation, and precision. Marcus wasn't just a bodyguard. He was the end result of thousands of years of human military evolution, trained in every form of combat his species had ever developed. The other species looked at him and saw a soft, weak creature with no visible weapons or armor. They had no frame of reference for understanding that they were looking at something far more dangerous than any of their own warriors. As the formal session was called to order, Ambassador Kethvar found himself glancing repeatedly at the human section. Something about their bodyguard continued to bother him, though he couldn't identify what it was. The feeling would only grow stronger as the negotiations progressed, and by the time he understood what he was seeing, it would be far too late to do anything about it. Dr. Mitchell stood to address the assembly, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber despite her small stature. "Honored delegates," she began, "we gather today at a crossroads. The path we choose will determine whether our galaxy moves toward prosperity or plunges into a darkness that could last for generations. Behind her, Marcus Chun continued his silent vigil, his calm eyes tracking every movement in the room. To the watching aliens, he appeared to be nothing more than a ceremonial guard. In reality, he was a weapon system running continuous threat assessments, and what he was beginning to detect would soon turn their laughter into terror. The negotiations had been proceeding for 6 hours when the first assassination attempt occurred. Dr. Mitchell was presenting a complex trade agreement that could potentially satisfy the Corvin Dominion's expansion needs without requiring military conquest when a shimmer in the air caught Marcus Chin's attention. The Phantom Guild assassin materialized behind the human delegation, its chameleon-like skin shifting from the perfect mimicry of the chamber's wall to a mottled gray-green. The creature stood 8 feet tall with 4 arms ending in razor-sharp talons, and its species was legendary throughout the galaxy for their ability to kill silently and disappear without a trace. What happened next would be analyzed by military strategists for decades to come. Marcus moved. There was no dramatic diving or shouting of warnings. One moment, he was standing motionless behind Dr. Mitchell's chair, and the next moment the phantom assassin was on the ground with its neck bent at an impossible angle. The entire sequence had taken 0.7 seconds. The chamber erupted in chaos. Security details that had been relaxed during the diplomatic proceedings suddenly found themselves facing an active threat. Energy weapons appeared from nowhere as delegates scrambled for cover behind overturned tables and activated personal shields. But the threat was already over. Marcus Chin stood exactly where he had been before, his hands once again clasped behind his back. The only evidence that anything had happened was the body of one of the galaxy's most feared assassins lying crumpled on the marble floor. "How?" gasped General Thax, his scaled hide now pale with shock. "The Phantom Guild are masters of stealth. Their assassins can kill a target and escape without ever being detected." Colonel Vance leaned forward slightly in her chair. Marcus detected the threat 17 seconds before it materialized. He identified the exact location where the assassin would appear, calculated the optimal response, and positioned himself accordingly. When the target became solid, the engagement was already over. The assembled delegates stared at her in disbelief. 17 seconds? The Phantom Guild's technology was supposed to be undetectable by any known scanning method. Ambassador Yilandra's gaseous form shimmered with agitation. "That's impossible. Our most advanced sensors can barely detect a phantom operative during the actual moment of materialization." Dr. Mitchell set down her presentation notes calmly. "Human sensory perception operates differently than most species. We evolved as persistence hunters on a world full of camouflage predators. Our brains are designed to detect patterns that don't quite fit, to notice the tiny details that indicate when something is wrong." She gestured toward Marcus, who hadn't moved during the entire explanation. Marcus noticed a microscopic distortion in the air circulation patterns. The assassin's cloaking technology was perfect for visual spectrum detection, but it slightly altered the way air moved around its position. To human senses, that was enough. The implication hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. They had been so focused on countering advanced technology and exotic abilities that they had never considered the advantage of enhanced natural perception combined with perfect training. Lord Commander Zith AK of the Void Stalkers leaned forward, his cybernetic implants clicking softly. "Impressive, but surely this was simply good fortune. No single being could consistently." His words were cut off as Marcus Chin spoke for the first time since arriving at the station. "There are currently 4 more Phantom operatives in this chamber. 2 Zephyrian infiltrators positioned near the eastern exits, 1 Thoraxian berserker who has been chemically enhanced for a suicide attack, and a quantum bomb that was placed in the ventilation system approximately 3 hours ago." The silence that followed was absolute. The Phantom operatives are located behind the Gossamer delegation, inside the mechanoid translator unit, beneath the floor panel marked E7, and suspended from the ceiling above the Corvin Dominion section. The Zephyrian infiltrators replaced 2 of the original maintenance staff and are carrying molecular disruptors. The enhanced Thoraxian is the individual standing third from the left in the honor guard formation, and The quantum bomb is currently counting down from 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Every security chief in the chamber began barking orders simultaneously. Weapons appeared from nowhere as delegates either rushed for the exits or activated personal protection systems. The carefully orchestrated assassination attempt that was supposed to eliminate multiple delegations and spark a galactic war had been completely exposed. Marcus continued in the same calm tone. The Phantom operatives will attempt to escape through the dimensional folds in 12 seconds. The enhanced Thoraxian will try to reach the human delegation in 18 seconds. The bomb can be disarmed by accessing the secondary control panel in Maintenance Shaft C9. What followed was the most precisely coordinated security response in Council history. Phantom assassins who should have been able to disappear at will found themselves trapped as their dimensional escape routes were blocked. The enhanced Thoraxian Berserker was subdued before it could take 3 steps. The quantum bomb was located and disarmed with over a minute to spare. In less than 10 minutes, what should have been a massacre had been reduced to a minor security incident. Ambassador Kethvar found himself staring at the human bodyguard with something approaching awe. How did you know all of that? Marcus turned those calm dark eyes toward the Zolonian diplomat. Pattern recognition, behavioral analysis, threat assessment. Every species has tells when they're planning violence. You learn to read them. General Thax's voice was barely above a whisper. You detected all of that just by watching. The Phantom operatives had synchronized their breathing, which created micro-resonances in their cloaking fields. The Zephyrians kept checking specific exit routes and had elevated stress pheromones. The enhanced Thoraxian showed classic signs of combat stimulant overload. The bomb had a quantum signature that interfered with the chamber's harmonic frequencies. Dr. Mitchell smiled slightly. Marcus has been doing this for 23 years. He started as a police officer in Hong Kong, then moved to personal protection for high-risk diplomats. He's prevented 47 assassination attempts, stopped 12 terrorist attacks, and has never lost a client. The assembled delegates were beginning to understand that they had fundamentally misunderstood what they were dealing with. This wasn't just a bodyguard. This was a living weapon system with capabilities that none of their species had ever developed. Colonel Vance decided it was time to drive the point home. Every human military unit has individuals like Marcus, though few reach his level of expertise. We've been refining these skills for thousands of years. While other species develop technology to solve their problems, humans develop themselves. Lord Commander Zithay Case, Cybernetic, I focused on Marcus with new interest. You're saying there are more like him? Our entire military is built around the concept of individual excellence, Patricia replied. Every human soldier is trained in pattern recognition, threat assessment, and adaptive response. We don't rely on superior technology or natural advantages. We rely on superior preparation and execution. The implications were staggering. If this was the level of capability that humans considered normal for personal protection, what would their actual military units be like in combat? Ambassador Yilandra's gaseous form pulsed with nervous energy. But surely your military forces can't all be at this level of awareness. Marcus Chin spoke again, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. I'm not military. I'm private security. Military personnel receive significantly more extensive training. The room fell silent again as this information sank in. The being who had just single-handedly dismantled an assassination plot that should have been impossible to detect wasn't even a soldier. He was the human equivalent of a civilian contractor. Dr. Mitchell picked up her presentation notes again. Now, if we could return to the matter at hand, I believe the recent events have demonstrated that human capabilities might be more relevant to galactic security than previously assumed. General Thax found his voice first. Dr. Mitchell, with respect, I think we need to reconsider some assumptions. If human observation skills are this advanced, what other capabilities might we be unaware of? Sarah smiled diplomatically. Why don't we finish discussing the Corvin expansion issue, and then, perhaps we can arrange some cultural exchange programs. I'm sure our military would be happy to demonstrate some training techniques. The threat of war that had hung over the chamber just hours before was beginning to seem much less pressing. None of the major powers wanted to risk conflict with a species whose true capabilities were clearly far beyond what they had imagined. As the negotiations resumed, Marcus Chun returned to his silent vigil. But Now, instead of being ignored or mocked, his presence commanded the complete attention of every being in the chamber. They all knew they were in the presence of something unprecedented in their galaxy. What they didn't yet realize was that they had only seen the beginning of what humanity was capable of. The real demonstration was still to come. The attempted assassination had changed everything. What had begun as a routine diplomatic session where major powers would decide the fate of smaller worlds had become something entirely different. The human delegation was no longer seen as a quaint curiosity from a backward world. They were now viewed as a potential game-changer in galactic politics. Ambassador Kethvar called for a recess to allow all delegations time to process what had just occurred. As beings filed out of the chamber in small groups, speaking in hushed tones, the Zolonian diplomat found himself approaching the human table once again. "Dr. Mitchell," he said, his forearms moving in a gesture of deep respect, "I believe we may have underestimated your people significantly. Would it be possible to speak privately?" Sarah nodded toward a smaller conference room off the main chamber. "Of course, Ambassador. Colonel Vance and Mr. Chun will accompany us, if that's acceptable." As they walked through the corridors of the station, Kethvar noticed how Marcus moved. Every step was deliberate, his path chosen to maintain optimal sight lines and reaction positions. The human was constantly scanning their environment, but so subtly that anyone not specifically watching for it would miss the signs entirely. Once they were seated in the private conference room, Kethvar leaned forward intently. "I must ask you directly, Dr. Mitchell, why are your people really here?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure I understand the question, Ambassador. The Zolonian Empire specifically requested human mediation for this dispute, against the advice of most of our military commanders. We were told that your species had unique perspectives on conflict resolution. After what we just witnessed, I'm beginning to suspect there were other factors involved in that decision." Colonel Vance and Dr. Mitchell exchanged glances. Patricia nodded slightly. "Ambassador," Sarah said carefully, "what do you know about human history?" Kethvar's expression grew puzzled. "Very little, I'm afraid. Your world was only recently contacted. We know you achieved faster-than-light travel about 50 years ago and have been expanding slowly into nearby systems. That's the peaceful expansion phase," Patricia said quietly. "But our species has a much longer and more complex history. For most of our existence, we lived on a single world where different groups of humans fought constantly against each other." The Zolonian diplomat's eyes widened. "You mean your species engaged in warfare against itself?" "For thousands of years," Sarah confirmed. "We fought wars over territory, resources, ideology, and sometimes just because we could. We developed weapons capable of destroying our entire planet multiple times over. We created military doctrines for every conceivable type of conflict." Marcus spoke from his position near the door. "Every major military strategy used in this galaxy was developed by humans centuries ago. The Corvin expansion doctrine is a variation on what we called Blitzkrieg. The Thoraxian honor combat system is similar to our medieval knight traditions. The Zephyrian pack hunting tactics are nearly identical to strategies we used in our tribal periods." Kethvar's scales began shifting to a deeper blue, a sign of intense concentration among his species. "You're saying that human military knowledge is more advanced than ours?" "Not more advanced," Patricia corrected. "More comprehensive. Other species developed military capabilities based on their evolutionary advantages. Humans had no natural advantages, so we had to become good at everything. We learned to fight in every environment, against every type of enemy, using every possible method." Dr. Mitchell leaned forward. "But the crucial development came when we learned how to stop fighting each other. For the past 2 centuries, humans have been focused on applying our military knowledge to peacekeeping and conflict resolution instead of conquest." The implications hit Kethvar like a wave. The Zolonian leadership knows this, don't they? That's why they requested human mediation. They want to see if your conflict resolution methods are as sophisticated as your warfare capabilities. Sarah smiled sadly. "Ambassador, in the past 6 hours, we've identified 17 different ways this conference could escalate into galactic war. We've also developed preliminary solutions for each scenario. The assassination attempt was actually the least dangerous threat we detected." "What do you mean?" Marcus answered without turning from the door. 3 delegations came here planning to use the negotiations as cover for military buildups. 2 others are positioning fleets for surprise attacks regardless of the conference outcome. One species is planning to introduce a biological weapon that would target the Corvan genetic structure. And the Ethereal Collective has a doomsday weapon that could render this entire sector uninhabitable. Kethvar felt his blood temperature drop. How could you possibly know all of that? Pattern analysis, Patricia replied. Military movements, resource allocation, diplomatic statements, even body language during the negotiations. Every piece of information tells a story if you know how to read it. Dr. Mitchell opened her briefcase and removed a thick folder. We've prepared detailed assessments of every delegation's true objectives, along with recommended approaches for defusing each potential conflict. But, Ambassador, we need you to understand something important. She slid the folder across the table. Humans didn't come here just to mediate this one dispute. We came because our analysis suggests that this galaxy is heading toward a war that could destroy civilized life as we know it. Not in decades or years. In weeks. Kethvar opened the folder with trembling hands. The first document was titled Galactic War Probability Assessment, Current Trajectory Analysis. The conclusion was stark and terrifying. 94.7% probability of total galactic warfare within 37 standard days. This can't be accurate, he whispered. Check our math, Colonel Vance suggested. We've included all source data and analytical methodology. Every number can be verified through your own intelligence networks. As Kethvar read through the documentation, his expression grew more and more horrified. The humans hadn't just identified the immediate threats. They had mapped out how each conflict would cascade into larger wars, how alliance structures would crumble, and how the final stages would play out. According to this analysis, the Corvan expansion issue is just the trigger. The real war will begin when the major powers try to stop them and realize they can't achieve victory through conventional means. At that point, everyone will start using their ultimate weapons. Marcus nodded grimly. Biological warfare, stellar engineering, dimensional weapons, consciousness viruses. Every major power in this galaxy has developed something that could end civilization. The current balance only works because everyone assumes rational actors won't use these weapons. But once conventional war proves inadequate, Patricia continued, rational thinking will be replaced by desperation. At that point, someone will cross the line, and everyone else will follow. Dr. Mitchell leaned back in her chair. We've seen this pattern before, Ambassador. It's how humans nearly destroyed ourselves before we learned better. The good news is that it can be stopped if you're willing to take some dramatic steps. Kethvar closed the folder, his mind reeling. What kind of steps? Complete military reorganization, new alliance structures, shared defense initiatives, and, most importantly, a neutral peacekeeping force with the capability to intervene before conflicts escalate. The Zolonian diplomat stared at her. You're talking about restructuring the entire galactic political system. Yes, Sarah said simply. Because the alternative is the complete destruction of galactic civilization within 5 weeks. Marcus turned from the door for the first time since entering the room. Ambassador, there's something else you need to know. The human delegation isn't just here to negotiate. We're here to demonstrate human capabilities to the major powers. What you saw today was carefully planned. Kethvar's eyes widened. You allowed yourselves to be targeted by assassins? We knew about the assassination plot before we left Earth, Patricia revealed. Our intelligence networks detected it 3 weeks ago. We could have prevented it entirely, but we needed the major powers to see what human defensive capabilities look like. Dr. Mitchell nodded. Every delegation in that chamber now understands that their current security methods are inadequate against human-level threat detection. That gives us credibility when we propose new approaches to galactic security. The Zolonian ambassador sat in stunned silence for several minutes, processing everything he had learned. Finally, he looked up at the humans. What do you need from the Zolonian Empire? Help us convince the other major powers to take our proposals seriously, Sarah replied. We have solutions, but they require cooperation from species who have never worked together before. Without Zolonian support, we'll never get the others to listen. Kethvar stood slowly, his decision made. Dr. Mitchell, I'm going to contact the Zolonian High Command immediately. They need to hear this analysis directly from our military intelligence units. As he moved toward the door, he paused. One more question. How many humans know about this crisis? Marcus answered quietly. Every human government, military commander, and intelligence agency. We've been preparing for this scenario for 18 months. If peaceful negotiation fails, we have contingency plans. What kind of contingency plans? Dr. Mitchell's expression became very serious. The kind that ensure galactic civilization survives, even if the current power structures don't. Kethvar left the room with a new understanding of what humanity represented. They weren't just another species seeking a place in galactic society. They were a force that could either save the galaxy or reshape it entirely, depending on how the next few days unfolded. As the door closed behind him, Colonel Vance turned to Dr. Mitchell. Think he'll convince the Zolonian leadership? He doesn't have a choice, Sarah replied. They'll run their own analysis and reach the same conclusions we did. The question is whether they'll act on it in time. Marcus returned to his position by the door. Timeline update. Corvin fleet movements suggest they're advancing their schedule. We now have 23 days before the point of no return. Dr. Mitchell sighed. Then, we'd better hope our demonstration was convincing enough. Because if we can't solve this through negotiation, the galaxy is about to learn what human warfare really looks like. The emergency session convened 18 hours later with representatives from every major galactic power. Word of the human threat assessment had spread through diplomatic channels, and what had begun as a routine territorial dispute had transformed into a crisis meeting that could determine the fate of the galaxy. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as species that normally avoided each other found themselves forced into close proximity. The ethereal collective had increased their presence to 6 representatives, their gaseous forms swirling with agitated patterns. The Mechanoid Confederation had brought their most advanced analytical units, while the Thraxian Imperium's honor guard stood at maximum readiness. Dr. Mitchell took her place at the central podium, her small human frame dwarfed by the massive chamber designed to accommodate beings of all sizes. Behind her, Marcus Chun maintained his vigilant position, but now every security detail in the room was watching him with respectful wariness. Honored delegates, Sarah began. In the past day, we have shared our analysis with the leadership of all major powers. I understand that many of you have conducted your own verification of our data. We are here because the conclusions are unavoidable. General Thax of the Corvin Dominion stood first, his scaled hide bearing new scars that indicated he had been in heated discussions with his own command structure. The human assessment has been reviewed by our most advanced strategic computers. The probability calculations are disturbing. However, the Corvin Dominion questions whether such dramatic changes to galactic governance are necessary. Admiral Skrix of the Void Stalkers activated her translation matrix. Our cybernetic projections confirm the human timeline, but the proposed solutions would require abandoning territorial expansion policies that have guided our civilization for 12,000 years. Dr. Mitchell nodded respectfully. I understand the magnitude of what we're asking, but consider the alternative. In 19 days, the first stage of the escalation begins when Corvin advance fleets encounter Thraxian resistance forces in the Epsilon sector. Both sides have already committed resources they cannot afford to lose. She gestured to a holographic display that materialized above the assembly. The engagement will last approximately 4 hours. The Corvin forces will achieve tactical victory, but suffer unexpected casualties due to new Thraxian weapons technology. This will prompt the Dominion to authorize the use of stellar disruption devices against the Thraxian homeworld. General Thax's expression grew dangerous. How could you possibly know our tactical planning in such detail? Colonel Vance stood to answer. Because we've been monitoring all fleet movements and communications for the past 6 months. Human intelligence capabilities operate on frequencies and through methods that aren't detectable by current galactic technology. Lord Commander Vyth of the Ethereal Collective's voice resonated through the chamber speakers. You admit to spying on sovereign powers? This is an act of war. Marcus Chin spoke without moving from his position. No, Lord Commander. This is an act of survival. Every major power in this chamber has intelligence operations targeting the others. The difference is that human intelligence gathering is more comprehensive and significantly more accurate. Ambassador Yilandra's gaseous form shifted to an aggressive red pattern. What gives your species the right to monitor our internal affairs? Dr. Mitchell's voice remained calm, but carried new steel. The same right that gives any species the ability to defend itself. Earth may be new to galactic politics, but we're not naive about how power operates. We know that every delegation in this room has contingency plans for eliminating potential threats. She activated another display showing detailed intelligence assessments. The Ethereal Collective has been developing consciousness viruses designed to target specific neural patterns. The mechanoids are building planet-killer dreadnoughts in hidden shipyards. The Zephyrian War clans have stockpiled enough biological weapons to sterilize 50 worlds. The chamber erupted in angry protests as each species found their most secret projects exposed. Energy weapons powered up as security details prepared for possible attacks. But Marcus Chin's voice cut through the chaos. Stand down. All of you. Now. The simple command somehow carried enough authority to freeze every being in the chamber. In the sudden silence, his calm voice continued. Every weapon I just mentioned has been under human observation since its development began. We know where they're built, how they work, and how to counter them. More importantly, we know how to prevent them from ever being used. General Thax's voice was barely controlled. You threaten us? No, General. We're offering you a choice. Dr. Mitchell stepped forward. Humanity has had the capability to destroy or disable every secret weapon project in this galaxy for the past 8 months. We could have ended the arms race before this meeting ever took place. The implications crashed over the assembled delegates like a cold wave. If the humans could detect and neutralize their ultimate weapons, then the entire foundation of galactic military balance had become obsolete. Admiral Scrix's cybernetic eye focused intently on the human delegation. Why didn't you act? Because destruction is easy, Colonel Vance replied. Building something better is harder. We didn't want to rule the galaxy through fear. We wanted to give you the chance to choose a different path. Ambassador Kethvar activated his speaking platform. The Zolonian Empire has reviewed the human proposals extensively. We believe their peacekeeping framework could work, but only if all major powers participate fully. Dr. Mitchell nodded gratefully toward the Zolonian diplomat. The core concept is simple: shared defense instead of mutual assured destruction. Each major power contributes resources to a unified peacekeeping force. In return, that force guarantees protection against external threats and prevents internal conflicts from escalating to civilization-ending levels. Lord Commander VYTH's ethereal form pulsed with skeptical energy. And who would command this peacekeeping force? Humans, conveniently? Actually, no. Sarah's response surprised everyone in the chamber. Human analysis indicates that effective peacekeeping requires rotating leadership and integrated command structures. No single species should have permanent control. She activated a new display showing proposed organizational charts. Command rotates every 2 years between participating powers. All major decisions require consensus among a multi-species council. Human forces would represent no more than 20% of total peacekeeping assets. The Thoraxian representative, Commander Zeftak, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. This assumes that human military capabilities are actually superior to our own. What evidence do we have beyond the actions of a single bodyguard? Marcus Chin finally moved from his position, walking to the center of the chamber. Would you like a demonstration, Commander? The Thoraxian warrior stood to his full 12 feet of height, his razor-sharp mandibles extending. Are you challenging the honor of the Thoraxian Imperium? No, Commander. I'm offering to show you why the current military balance in this galaxy is already obsolete. The chamber fell silent as the massive insectoid being faced the much smaller human. To most observers, it looked like a contest between a battle tank and an unarmed man. Standard combat protocols, Marcus said calmly. No lethal force, but full engagement otherwise. Are you ready? Commander Zeftak's mandibles clicked in what passed for Thoraxian laughter. Human, I am a veteran of 300 battles. My carapace can withstand energy weapons. My reflexes operate faster than your visual processing speed. I understand, Marcus replied. Shall we begin? The Thoraxian warrior launched himself forward with speed that should have been impossible for something of his size. His massive form became a blur of motion as four limbs struck toward the human from different angles simultaneously. 3 seconds later, Commander Zeftak found himself flat on his back with Marcus standing over him, completely unharmed. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. The speed and precision of the human's victory was beyond anything the watching aliens had imagined possible. How? Gasped General Thax. Marcus helped the stunned Thoraxian back to his feet. Commander Zeftak is an exceptional warrior by the standards of his species. But Thoraxian combat doctrine hasn't evolved significantly in the past millennium. Every move he made was predictable based on his species' fighting traditions. He turned to address the full assembly. Every species in this galaxy has developed military capabilities based on their own evolutionary advantages and cultural history. You've become specialists in specific types of warfare. Humans became generalists who can adapt to any opponent. Commander Zeftak, his pride wounded but his warriors' respect earned, clicked his mandibles in acknowledgement. The human speaks truth. In 3 seconds, he neutralized every advantage my species possesses. Dr. Mitchell stepped forward again. This is why the galactic balance is unstable. Every major power believes their ultimate weapons guarantee their security. But those weapons were designed to fight yesterday's enemies using yesterday's strategies. Warfare has evolved beyond your current paradigms. Admiral Scrix's mechanical voice carried new calculation. You're suggesting that human military doctrine represents a paradigm shift that makes conventional galactic warfare obsolete. Not suggesting, Colonel Vance corrected. Demonstrating. The peacekeeping force we're proposing isn't just about preventing conflicts. It's about introducing military capabilities that make large-scale warfare impractical. The delegates began to understand the true scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just a negotiation about territorial disputes. It was a fundamental reorganization of galactic power structures, backed by military capabilities that none of them could match. Lord Commander Vyth's ethereal form shifted to deep blue patterns of contemplation. And if we refuse your proposals? Dr. Mitchell's expression grew sad. Then, in 18 days, this galaxy begins a war that will end civilization as we know it. And when that happens, humanity will do whatever is necessary to ensure that some form of civilized life survives. The threat was implicit, but unmistakable. If the major powers chose mutual destruction, humans would intervene to prevent total annihilation, even if it meant conquering the galaxy to save it. Ambassador Kethvar stood slowly. The Zolonian Empire formally accepts the human peacekeeping proposal. One by one, the other delegations began to follow suit, each representative understanding that they faced a choice between cooperation and irrelevance. As the votes were counted, Dr. Mitchell allowed herself a small smile. They had 18 days to prevent galactic war. Now they had a chance to succeed. For 15 days later, the Galactic Peacekeeping Accord was put to its first test. The Corvin Advance Fleet had reached the Epsilon sector precisely on schedule, just as human projections had predicted. But, instead of encountering Thoraxian resistance forces, they found something entirely unprecedented in galactic history. A combined peacekeeping fleet representing 12 major powers, commanded by a joint human-Zolonian leadership team. Admiral Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Forces stood on the bridge of the peacekeeping flagship Harmony, watching the tactical displays as the Corvin fleet dropped out of hyperspace. The ship itself was a marvel of collaborative engineering, incorporating the best defensive technologies from every participating species while maintaining the strategic flexibility that characterized human military doctrine. Corvin fleet configuration matches our projections exactly, reported the mechanoid tactical officer, its cybernetic interfaces directly linked to the ship's sensors. 47 heavy cruisers, 12 dreadnoughts, and 6 stellar disruption platforms. Commander Theklar of the Zolonian Navy, serving as co-admiral, gestured with all 4 arms toward the tactical display. General Thax is maintaining standard battle formation. He expects to engage Thoraxian defenders in approximately 18 minutes. Admiral Chen nodded calmly. Open communications to the Corvin flagship. Full diplomatic protocols. The main screen shimmered and resolved into the image of General Thax standing on his command deck. The scaled warrior's expression showed surprise followed quickly by confusion as he recognized the human officer. Admiral Chun, he said slowly. This is unexpected. Our intelligence indicated that human forces were still limited to your local sector. General Thax, Sarah replied with professional courtesy. On behalf of the Galactic Peacekeeping Coalition, I'm here to inform you that the territorial dispute in the Epsilon sector has been resolved through negotiation. The systems you intended to annex have been granted protectorate status under the Peacekeeping Accord. The Corvin commander's expression hardened. The Corvin Dominion recognizes no authority higher than our own territorial claims. We did not consent to this peacekeeping arrangement. Actually, General, you did. Commander Theklar's voice carried the weight of legal authority. The Corvin representative to the Galactic Council voted in favor of the peacekeeping accord 12 days ago. That vote constitutes binding commitment under interstellar law. General Thax's rage was visible as his scales darkened. Representative Keelneth exceeded his authority. The Dominion Military Command does not recognize his actions. Admiral Chen leaned forward slightly. General, I understand your position, but I must inform you that proceeding with your planned annexation would constitute a violation of the Peacekeeping Accord. As the designated enforcement authority, we are required to prevent such violations. The Corvin commander's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. Admiral, with respect, you command a single ship. My fleet numbers 65 vessels crewed by the finest warriors in the galaxy. Even with exotic human capabilities, you cannot seriously intend to stop an entire invasion force. General, Sarah said quietly, we're not here to fight you. We're here to give you the opportunity to reconsider your course of action. And if we refuse? Admiral Chen's expression grew regretful. Then, we demonstrate why large-scale military actions are no longer viable in this galaxy. General Thax cut the communication link with an angry gesture. On his command deck, alarms began sounding as the Corvin fleet prepared for battle. His tactical officers were already analyzing the single peacekeeping vessel, calculating optimal attack vectors and weapon targeting priorities. General, reported his intelligence chief, the enemy vessel shows unusual energy signatures. Our sensors are having difficulty obtaining detailed tactical information. It doesn't matter, Thax replied grimly. All ships, prepare for immediate attack. Target the peacekeeping vessel and destroy it completely. We'll deal with the political consequences later. On the bridge of the Harmony, Admiral Chun watched the Corvin fleet assume attack formation with something approaching sadness. Marcus, are you ready? Marcus Chin stepped forward from his position near the command station. He was no longer wearing the simple black suit of a diplomatic bodyguard. Instead, he wore the midnight blue uniform of a human strategic operations commander, complete with insignia that marked him as one of the most dangerous military minds in known space. All human units are in position, Admiral, he reported. Stealth formations Alpha through Gamma are maintaining concealment. Strategic platforms Echo and Foxtrot have confirmed target locks. Commander Theklar's four eyes widened as the implications became clear. Admiral Chun, how many human vessels are actually present? Technically, Sarah smiled grimly. The Harmony is the only ship physically in this sector. But General Thax is about to learn that physical presence isn't required for effective military action. The Corvin fleet opened fire with everything they had. Massive energy beams and kinetic projectiles converged on the peacekeeping vessel in a display of firepower that should have vaporized anything short of a battle station. The Harmony didn't even bother to activate its shields. Every single shot missed. Impossible, breathed the mechanoid tactical officer. The targeting solutions were perfect. There's no way every weapon could have missed simultaneously. Marcus consulted his tactical display. The Corvin weapons are functioning normally, Commander. They're just not hitting what they think they're aiming at. General Thax was screaming orders on his command deck as his weapons officers reported target acquisition failure after target acquisition failure. The peacekeeping vessel remained exactly where it had been, apparently unprotected, but somehow every shot went wide. Marcus, Admiral Chen said calmly, please explain to General Thax what's happening. Marcus activated the communications system. General Thax, this is Commander Marcus Chun of Human Strategic Operations. Your weapons are functioning perfectly, but you're not actually shooting at our ship. You're shooting at a holographic projection. The real Harmony is approximately 6,000 kilometers from your target location. The Corvin commander's confusion was visible on the screen. That's impossible. Our sensors confirm the target location. Your sensors are detecting exactly what we want them to detect, General. Human electronic warfare capabilities operate on principles that your species hasn't discovered yet. We've been feeding false information to your targeting computers since the moment you dropped out of hyperspace. On cue, the holographic projection of the Harmony flickered and disappeared, revealing empty space where the Corvin fleet had been concentrating their fire. Now, General, Admiral Chen's voice came from a completely different location. Let me show you where we actually are. 67 human vessels materialized around the Corvin fleet like ghosts becoming solid. They had been there all along, hidden by stealth technology so advanced that it rendered them completely undetectable to any known sensors. But the human ships weren't the most shocking revelation. General, Marcus continued, please have your sensor operators scan the surface of your flagship's hull. Within seconds, Corvin voices were reporting contact with foreign objects. Hundreds of small devices had somehow attached themselves to every ship in the fleet without triggering any alarms. Those are human boarding pods, Marcus explained. Each one contains a full assault team equipped with weapons and equipment specifically designed to neutralize your ship's defenses. They've been in place for approximately 14 minutes. The scale of the tactical disaster was becoming clear to every Corvin officer. The human forces hadn't just detected their approach and positioned themselves advantageously. They had completely infiltrated the entire fleet without being noticed. This is still impossible, General Thax insisted, though his voice now carried uncertainty. Our defensive systems would have detected boarding actions. Not if the boarding teams are already inside your ship's defense perimeters before you activate them, Admiral Chen replied. General, every vessel in your fleet has been compromised. Your crews are unharmed, but your ships are under human control. You have two options, surrender and allow us to escort you back to Corvin space, or we can demonstrate what happens when human forces stop being polite. To emphasize the point, all 65 Corvin vessels simultaneously experienced complete system failures. Weapons powered down, engines went offline, and life support systems switched to emergency backup mode. Within 30 seconds, one of the most powerful military fleets in the galaxy had been reduced to helpless hulks floating in space. Then, just as suddenly, all systems came back online. As you can see, Marcus said quietly, we can disable your entire fleet at will. The only reason you're still operational is because we're hoping you'll make the smart choice. The communication channel fell silent as General Thax stared at displays showing his fleet's complete vulnerability. Every military doctrine he had ever studied had become irrelevant in the face of capabilities that shouldn't exist. Finally, he spoke. Admiral Chun, we surrender. The Corvin fleet will withdraw from the Epsilon sector immediately. Thank you, General, Sarah replied with genuine respect. Your decision may have prevented the galactic war that our projections indicated would begin today. As the Corvin fleet began its withdrawal, Commander Theklar turned to Admiral Chun with awe. Admiral, the coordination required for this operation. How long have human forces been preparing? 18 months, she replied. From the moment our strategic analysis indicated that galactic war was inevitable, every human military unit has been positioning for operations like this one. Marcus added quietly, what General Thax experienced today will be repeated anywhere in the galaxy that large-scale military aggression is attempted. The age of massive fleet actions and territorial conquest is over. 3 hours later, as the last Corvin vessel disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Chun received a priority communication from Earth Command. Admiral, came the voice of Fleet Admiral Rodriguez. Congratulations on a successful operation. How did the coalition partners perform? Excellently, sir. The Zolonian naval units adapted to human tactical doctrine faster than projected. The mechanoid sensor integration exceeded all expectations. I believe the peacekeeping model is viable for long-term operations. Excellent. Be advised that we've had similar peaceful resolutions to 3 other potential conflicts in the past week. The Phantom Guild has formally disbanded rather than face human counterintelligence operations. The Void Stalkers have requested membership in the Peacekeeping Coalition. and the Ethereal Collective has agreed to allow human observers to monitor their consciousness research. Admiral Chen smiled. It appears that word is spreading, sir. Indeed. Admiral, prepare your command for redeployment to the outer spiral. Intelligence indicates that the Hegemon Empire is planning something that could destabilize 17 systems. We want a peacekeeping presence in place before they can act. Understood, sir. We'll be in position within 6 days. As the communication ended, Marcus approached the command station. Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting massive changes in fleet movements throughout the galaxy. It appears that every major power is recalling their forward-deployed forces. Admiral Chen nodded with satisfaction. The demonstration effect. Once the major powers understand that conventional military action is no longer viable, they'll shift to political and economic competition instead. Commander Theklar's forearms gestured in the Zolonian expression of profound respect. Admiral, in a single engagement, human forces have accomplished what 1,000 years of diplomacy could not achieve. You've ended the age of galactic warfare. Not ended, Commander, Sarah corrected gently. Evolved. Warfare will always exist in some form. But now it will be fought with ideas, economics, and politics instead of planet-killing weapons. The galaxy will still have conflicts, but there'll be conflicts that civilization can survive. 6 months later, the Galactic Peacekeeping Coalition had grown to include 43 member species. The last major territorial war had ended not in conquest or destruction, but in negotiated settlement monitored by human-led peacekeeping forces. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, now serving as the coalition's director of conflict resolution, stood in her office overlooking the new peacekeeping headquarters on Nexus Prime. The same chamber where the council had once laughed at the human bodyguard now served as the coordination center for galactic security. Marcus Chen entered carrying a status report. He had been promoted to strategic operations director and now commanded peacekeeping forces throughout the galaxy. Sarah, he said, using the informal address they had maintained since their diplomatic days. The latest analysis shows an 87% reduction in large-scale military actions galaxy-wide. Economic cooperation between former enemies is at record levels. Cultural exchange programs are being established between species that had never directly communicated before. Dr. Mitchell smiled as she looked out at the bustling spaceport where ships from dozens of worlds arrived daily for peacekeeping coordination meetings. Marcus, do you ever think about how different things might have been if we hadn't intervened? Every day, he replied quietly. According to our original projections, this galaxy should have destroyed itself months ago. Instead, we're seeing the beginning of something unprecedented, true galactic civilization. The transformation had been complete. The age of conquest had ended, replaced by an era of cooperation enforced by capabilities so advanced that resistance was pointless. The galaxy had learned, sometimes through gentle demonstration and sometimes through stark example, that humanity represented an evolutionary leap in military thinking that made traditional warfare obsolete. And it had all begun with a council that laughed at a human bodyguard, not knowing they were looking at the future of galactic security. The war that should have destroyed everything had ended before it began, not with the sound of massive battles, but with the quiet efficiency of human strategic thinking applied on a galactic scale.